Calendar for the day. The first bill on the House calendar today is Senate File 1238. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 1238, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to liquor.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Sanders, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. In my best efforts to one-up Chair Cornish, he may have pie, but I brought liquor to the floor. So, but in all seriousness, members, liquor omnibus bill up in front of you today. I think once again we've put together very good legislation for the state of Minnesota when it comes to its liquor regulations. We did take the Senate language, which was very, very similar, almost identical to the House language, and I'll walk through just a couple maybe more major highlights of the bill. One of the big things that comes up starts in Article 2. We're allowing micro distilleries who produce less than 40,000 gallons to sell one 375 milliliter bottle of each variety to customer per day. We have Representative Swedzinski and Representative Anderson have a Sunday growler language in here. We have what's in here is known as the Bloody Mary language, which will allow alcohol to be sold on the weekends prior or before 10 a.m. So you can enjoy brunch with your families and have a Bloody Mary or mimosa, something along those lines. But moving on from there, we have several different categories of special licenses where we have various golf courses or other entities, municipal entities that may need liquor license. Those have all been non-controversial, and I believe for the most part were identical in the House and the Senate. And it looks, I think we're going to add one more provision, if not two, during the amendment process. But all of those have been non-controversial, and to this point, members, fairly non-controversial bill, and I look forward to your support.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Teets moves to amend Senate File number 1238. First engrossment as follows, and the amendment is coded A5.
The member from Stearns, Representative Tice, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is actually, well, this was brought to me the day after the liquor bill passed the Commerce Committee, and the City of St. Cloud wanted to add all sales of beer and alcohol at the Municipal Athletic Complex strong. Right now, the city has permission to sell strong beer at the Northwood League's baseball game, and that was at the request of the league. And now, instead of changing their coolers back over and over again, they would like to just go ahead with strong beer.
There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hartman moves to amend the Tice amendment to Senate File number 1238, the first engrossment, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A15-0636, 0536, what is it there? 0636.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Hortman, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Tice, thank you for being agreeable about my amendment to your amendment. This is also a non-controversial, nonpartisan exemption for an event center in Brooklyn Park. It's an event center that primarily serves the Lao and Hmong community, and they would just like to be listed in the list of exemptions similar to what Representative Tice is asking for someone in her district, and I'd appreciate your support.
Discussion on the Hortman amendment. The member from Anoka, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the underlying bill author, I see this as a friendly amendment, and I assume Representative Tice does as well.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the Hortman amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails, and the amendment to the amendment is adopted. There is another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Atkins and others move to amend The Sanders amendment to Senate File 1238, the second of Grossman, and the amendment to the amendment is coded RA 15-027.
The member from Dakota, Representative Atkins, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I think this is also a friendly amendment. Representative Teese, thank you for your willingness to sign on and be so accommodating. Thank you to Representative Hoppe and Sanders for signing on as well. This is regarding powdered alcohol. It's a product that was approved by the federal government for labeling, but they left the safety considerations up to the state. And so what this does is say that we won't have this product of powdered alcohol sold here in Minnesota until at least July 1 of 2016, or June 1 of 2016, which will give the alcohol gambling enforcement folks, as well as the Department of Health, an opportunity to look at powdered alcohol. The concerns that are being raised that I've heard from school board members and parents is that you literally just add water to this product and it becomes alcohol. The concern from school board members is that it'll be snuck into school events, that it may be snuck into school, and parents are raising the same sort of concerns. It was and passed unanimously with bipartisan support in the committee, but we're working off the Senate file rather than the House file, so it needs to be amended into this bill, and so I appreciate members' support.
The member from Carver, Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Atkins. Members, Representative Atkins is correct. We did hear this bill as part of the Omnibus Liquor Bill discussions. It was in the House version of the bill. It's not in the Senate. It is my understanding that Senator Metzen and the senators are okay with this. I would encourage your support. I have not heard either in committee or since then of anybody that's opposed to it. I do know that Representative Newberger wants to speak to the amendment as well, also in support of it. Members, I would encourage your support. Thank you.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I also rise in support of the Atkins amendment. The powdered alcohol issue, this is brand new to the emergency medical community. We really need to understand what we're working with here before we give the green light to it. So members, I do urge your support of the Atkins amendment so we know what we're dealing with here. Thank you, Representative Atkins, for bringing this forward.
Representative Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a wonderful bill. Please vote green.
Any further discussion on the Atkins amendment to the Tice amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the Atkins amendment signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment to the amendment is adopted. Representative Thiessen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you. You know, as folks know, on the issue of Sunday sales, the caucuses are kind of, there's no position either on the Republican or Democratic side, but we did get distributed some information from a PAC, the Liberty, Minnesota PAC, that has nobody's name on it. So we have actually campaign material being distributed on the House floor. No one is taking any credit for it, which seems, I don't know what the parliamentary inquiry is. I guess it seems inappropriate to me.
There was one copy at the desk. It does have the name Drazkowski on it, so that's the member that distributed that.
Well, it's not on the copies that was distributed, but thank you, Representative. It should have been marked on all the copies.
Usually what happens is the member signs one copy and then has our staff printed. Apparently these came in pre-printed, so they didn't all get signed. I assume that was just an oversight. But so the members know that piece of literature came from Representative Drazkowski. We are now on the Tice amendment as amended, the A5 amendment. Further discussion to the Tice amendment as amended. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting the Tice amendment as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment as amended is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Loon moves to amend Senate File 1238, the first and Grossman as amended, and the amendment is coded A2.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, the A2 amendment has to do with moving the decision on the Sunday sales issue to local governments, where I think it appropriately should reside. Your cities, your counties, whoever is the local unit of government that's authorized to issue liquor licenses, to decide if the hours of which your off-sale liquor can be open. They do have the ability to put constraints on it within the parameters of the state law. All of those decisions are made by local authorities. And as we all know, Minnesota is a vast and diverse state. Each community is different, and some communities have come to me as one of the proponents of changing our current policy prohibiting off-sale liquor sales on Sunday, and asked to have the law changed. Either they're a border community that loses a lot of business on Sundays across the border, many resort communities. We had a number of testifiers in an informational hearing that was done before the Commerce Committee, including a gentleman who flew down from Tower, Minnesota, because this was so important to him and to his business. He has both on-sale and off-sale liquor in his business, and about the hundreds or thousands of people he turns away from his store every year on Sundays and loses business. So, you know, I know that this is an issue the legislature has perhaps considered for many years, but this is a slightly different tactic on it. The state has said that there is no ability to sell liquor on Sundays. But I think the question that members need to ask yourselves, if the state is the appropriate unit of government to make those decisions. Eden Prairie is different than Ely. We have different needs across our states. And what this does is simply says that your local unit of government is the appropriate body to make the decision affecting local businesses, local consumers, local taxpayers, and that's where the decisions should reside. I must also point out there's been some concerns raised by the Teamsters and folks who deliver a liquor that they do not want to have their members working on Sundays. And I have talked with them. I have offered to try to resolve that issue in any way I could. And so there is language in this amendment that would prohibit retailers, so liquor stores and wholesalers from accepting deliveries on Sunday. And so it is with that intent that I try to address that issue, and it should take care of the problem to the best of my ability. And with that, members, you know, we do a lot of discussion about local control with everything from our schools to other issues. This is, whatever your stance is on Sunday liquor, this is your opportunity to say, local governments, you're elected locally by the same voters that maybe some of which sent you here, but they are fully capable of making this decision. And if this is something that your community wants, your local government should have the ability to make that choice. So I would ask members to support the A2 amendment.
There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Earhart moves to amend the Loon Amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment, as amended, and the amendment to the amendment is coded RA15-026.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Earhart, to explain your amendment to the amendment.
Well, what we're seeing here, Mr. Speaker and members, is a renaissance. We're going back to the blue law days and shuffling them around a little bit. One of them happens to be the liquor on Sunday, but there happens to be another one that's probably just as important, if not more important, and that is car sales on Sunday. And that's what this amendment addresses. It allows the sale of cars on Sunday to proceed with all the other accoutrements that the car dealers perform in the way of repairs and so forth. And there's a piece that I handed out from the Federal Trade Commission that kind of explains things that we're talking about, or I'm talking about. And it talks about the fact that when you can't buy a car on Sunday, you are probably paying more money because you can't have the time to shop around like others when you're working all week, and you, instead of having a couple days on the weekend to proceed to find that fine-looking vehicle that you want, and it just doesn't make any sense. So this is a chance for the people who really are interested in sweeping away those old laws of the past to bundle these together, and we can get rid of both of them at the same time in one vote. When in fact that the Federal Trade Commission in their letter says they identified no benefits from the current law for consumers, which forbids, and this happens to be written to an Illinois legislator, but the same thing applies here. I think there are 13 states that don't allow automobiles on Sunday sales, and you ought to be able to get out there and kick the tires and make your transaction when you're available. I can't think of how many times at the door people would say, I want to buy a car on Sunday. Why won't they let me do that? And I say, well, I don't know if I can help you. Why don't you have a car out in the yard? And they said, you know, this one lady said, well, you notice that the front tire is blowing out. And I said, I do. Well, you probably need a new car. She said, well, not only that, but when it dropped in that big pothole, it broke the axle on the front axle on our vehicle, and there we are. So even if we wanted to go buy liquor, this was Sunday afternoon because I door knock all weekends as some of you do. She said, we don't have a car to do that, and I said, well, take the various commuter services might be available. And she said, well, you know, they just pulled off the bus that used to run by here because they didn't have enough money to run that anymore. So as we go down the path of life, we find all those obstacles. And I said, well, why don't you do it on Saturday? And she said, well, my husband and I work 5 days a week, one day shift, one night shift. So on Saturday, we do our shopping and grocery shopping and other stuff for the kids. We do our washing and so forth. And Sunday, after going to church, we'd like to go out and look at cars, and then we'd make the purchase one. And here we are sitting here. We don't have, because of the failure of government to give us sufficient monies to run the bus line, we don't have enough money for that. And we, as a matter of fact, don't have enough money to not working full time. So can you help us with that? And then she said, I said, well, I don't know. We're working on some things over at the Capitol right now that might be able to help you. And then she said, you know, and another thing that's been bothering me, my cat is up on the roof, been up there for a week. Can you help me with that? I said, what you want to do is call your local fire chief. She said, I called the local fire chief, and he was over at the Capitol lobbying for sprinklers in buildings. So I haven't been able to get any help from any kind of government units. Can't you help me some way? And I said, well, we're going to have an opportunity to make sure that you will have an opportunity to buy a car on Sunday. And this is a good ticket for this is this amendment. It should bring in all of the Tea Party, Liberty Party, and whatever the name is on that flyer that handed out, Liberty PAC, I think. Now those people will like this. It cleans up the blue laws finally here in the state of Minnesota. And I appreciate your green vote on this.
The member from Carver, Representative Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of order.
State your point of order.
Mr. Speaker, under Rule 3.21, germaneness, I would argue that Representative Earhart's well-explained amendment greatly expands the scope of the bill. There are two completely different sections of statute, and I think we would all agree that buying a car is significantly more a bigger deal for most people than buying alcohol. I'm not saying for everybody, but I think it greatly expands the point of the scope of the bill, and I would ask the Speaker to rule it non-germane.
Thank you, Representative Hoppe. After reviewing the amendment to the amendment, and the rule, I find the point of order well taken. There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the...
I would like to...
Representative Earhart, for what purpose?
I would like to appeal the ruling of the chair.
Representative Earhart would like to appeal the ruling of the Speaker.
And I'd like to have a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
A roll call has been requested. Unfortunately, Representative Earhart, I don't see 15 hands, but I'm sure you'd like to speak to the motion. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Earhart, to your motion.
Well, Mr. Speaker and members, I certainly have, well, one thing I wanted to mention. Whenever time I've been involved in one of these appealing of the rule of the chair, somehow it always comes out one way. And I think that this is a plot. And I think this is going on all the time because it always comes out the same way. So I really, you know, the only time I've seen it come out the other way is when Ron Abrams was chairing one day and he gave it to the House to make the vote on it. And he said, I can't decide this, I want you all to do it. And it came out the opposite as what you would expect. Now, I don't know that we shouldn't do that on this vote, Mr. Speaker.
Sunday cars.
Sunday cars are the thing.
Get your 12-pack in your new car.
Members, the question before the body is, shall the decision of the Speaker stand as the judgment of the House? A yes or green vote supports the ruling of the Speaker, a no or red vote goes against the ruling of the Speaker. The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling, to that motion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I had risen before, and I was hoping that I could have spoken on the motion when it was first, or on the point of order when it was first raised, because actually I agree with Representative Hoppe. I don't think it is germane to this bill. However, what I wanted to say was that I think it would be germane to the public safety bill.
No, I've got 6 of them.
Because this law that actually bans car sales on Sunday, members may not know this, but it has criminal penalties. Members, you should support repealing this ban. Do you know that if you violate the law and sell cars on a Sunday, it's a misdemeanor? And if you do it a second time, it's a gross misdemeanor. That means you can go to jail for up to a year for selling cars on Sunday. Now, isn't that absurd? So this isn't going to be up this year. I think it's not germane to this bill. Frankly, I'm going to vote to uphold the ruling of the Speaker. Sorry, Representative Earhart. I do not think this is germane. However, I hope that you'll all give it some thought. This should come up next year or in the future. It is ridiculous that we have this law on the books in Minnesota. The lobbying to keep it as it is absolutely fierce. But the people that this is hurting are your constituents. This is hurting consumers in the state of Minnesota. This letter that was passed out by Representative Earhart, I hope you'll all look at it because this is an anti-competitive practice that hurts consumers. More so, this is more compelling, a more compelling case for free markets even than the Sunday liquor issue. Because this is just a matter of selling a consumer good, and our law makes it a crime to sell an ordinary consumer good on Sunday. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Anoka, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Advice to the body. Members, 321B says an amendment to amendment on the House floor must relate only to the primary amendment, which I guess you can make an argument that it does. But the next clause, if it had just stopped there, I think that'd be one issue. But the next clause says without introducing any new subject. Members, clearly, whether or not when you can't buy a car is completely different from whether or not local government has the authority to say whether or not a liquor store can be open. In addition to that, I think that this is something that really does deserve consideration. Of course, it would be nice to be able to go out and look at a car on Sundays, but there are a lot of other implications there, not to mention, unless you can pay straight up cash for your car, financial institutions aren't open on Sundays, and it's going to be very difficult to purchase insurance on that vehicle. So this is a completely new subject with many other implications. I would ask that we uphold the Speaker's ruling.
The member from Washington, Representative Schoen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members on the GOP side. I just want to remind you that if you support the Speaker here, you're also supporting Representative Liebling. This is your chance.
Any further discussion on the appeal to ruling of the Speaker? Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know those things, those are secondary matters, whether or not there's the banking is there or the insurance is there, because in the free market system, as you well know, all of that will rise to meet the occasion. Representative Doskowski knows that because that's why he's a free market guy. And you should know that too, Representative, that when you set one thing in motion in the free market, the other free markets around it, those whirling dervishes around that will meet your needs. And so I think you ought to vote against the Speaker on this baby. Thank you.
Any further discussion? As a reminder, members, the question before the body is, shall the decision of the Speaker stand as the judgment of the House? A yes or green vote supports the ruling of the Speaker. A no or red vote goes against the ruling of the Speaker. The clerk will take the roll on the question. The clerk will close the roll. There being 113 ayes and 17 nays, it is the judgment of the House that the decision of the Speaker shall stand. There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hansen moves to amend the Loon Amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A18.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this amendment takes any tax revenue that are gained from Sunday sales and appropriates that on an open and standing basis to the Commissioner of Human Services for alcohol and treatment programs. Lost in the debate often on the liquor bill is a component of the bill we'll be hearing later, and that is how much money Minnesota spends on chemical dependency. And we actually have a fund. There is a consolidated chemical dependency treatment fund that is in Human Services. And that gives out grants for chemical dependency. Members, there is a cost to alcohol that isn't just defined by dollars. There is a cost on families. There's a cost throughout our state and local and federal system to alcohol. We provide, the base forecast this year for FY16 is $82.7 million, and for next year is $85.2 million in chemical dependency. Now, we've heard throughout the years, and I've been here 10 years, and I've voted against Sunday sales each of those years. But we've heard about the revenue that we're losing or the revenue that would be gained. I'm not sure exactly how much revenue there is to be gained. I know Representative Ansel, a few years ago, there was a fiscal note that said it was only $300,000 to $500,000. But what my amendment does is it says whatever revenue is gained from that Sunday sale, that we dedicate that to dependency programs. So I'd ask for your support.
The member from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of order, and I'm prepared to offer advice.
State your point of order.
Under 3.21 House Rules, paragraph B, an amendment to an amendment on the House floor must relate only to the primary amendment without introducing new subject. Representative Hansen, I absolutely appreciate where you're going with this. Not only is this a serious topic, but it's a sensitive topic, and it's one that we should give a full vetting to. In fact, I would be more than willing to support and work with you on future legislation. But unfortunately, neither the bill nor the amendment deal with alcohol treatment and recovery programs. And while this affects many lives across the state, and this affects many of the families that we know, it's just simply not germane to this. But I appreciate you bringing it forward, being more than happy to work with you on future legislation.
Representative Hansen, do you have advice?
Advice, Mr.
State your advice.
The provision doesn't appropriate a specific amount of dollars. It says that any revenues from the Sunday sales, if they should occur, would be appropriated on an open and standing basis. So I think that this is germane to the underlying amendment. I do have 4 other amendments that are exactly the same that are there, but I think this is an important topic that should be considered.
Thank you, members. After reviewing the amendment to the amendment, and the rule, I find the point of order well taken. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Atkins moves to amend the Loon Amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended. And the amendment to the amendment is coded A27.
The member from Dakota, Representative Atkins, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is, and I hear folks whistling like fireworks, it's a fireworks amendment. It illustrates the point that about municipal control. It would enable municipalities to make decisions about whether or not fireworks could be sold within their community. And with that, Mr. Speaker, would the author of the amendment yield for a question, please? Representative Loon.
She will yield. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Loon. Representative Loon, could you walk me through a list of other products that are controlled for sale or banning thereof at the municipal level?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, I don't have research to examine other products because the bill before us has to do with liquor. And I did ask nonpartisan research to provide me a list of all of the things that local governments have jurisdiction over with regards to liquor sales in their areas. And basically, a municipality can decide to have municipal liquor stores rather than private. Their zoning laws can restrict where a liquor licensee can operate a business, and they can be more restrictive than what the state allows. They can require, you know, other standards of behavior. If you are going to serve liquor, you may have to have food. Limitations on noise, limitations on the kinds of marketing, anything that would govern sort of the operation of an establishment that offers alcohol. And they also control the number of licenses that can be offered. So there's a wide range of things that municipalities do control when it comes to liquor.
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Loon yield for one follow-up?
She will yield. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Loon. And I appreciate that was very helpful in terms of what cities can control with respect to liquor. It's not a quiz, by the way, or you're not on Jeopardy or anything, but are you aware of any other, and I checked around a little bit, I'm not aware of any other product that is controlled at the municipal level in terms of whether it could be sold or banned. I'm just asking, are you aware of anything else, whether you've done the research or not, aware of any other product other than the one that you're proposing here that would be controlled for sale or banning at the local level?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Atkins, no, I am not aware, but again, as the underlying bill deals with the topic of liquor, that is the only area I researched.
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I can't actually make out whether Representative Hoppe is there or not. Can you? Representative Drazkowski, would you yield for a quick question, please?
He will yield. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, I know that you had, I think, a similar amendment. I'm curious if you did any research relative to that as to whether a product at the municipal level could be sold or have its sale controlled or banned at the local level, other than the one that's being proposed in this amendment.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Atkins. In Minnesota, as you know, Representative Atkins, the local municipalities have the powers and authorities and duties granted to them by the state of Minnesota. So what this amendment simply will do is will give to them the authority to make this decision. And we do that in a wide variety of areas. This is just another one of those, and appreciate your question. Thank you, Representative Atkins.
Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Drazkowski. That's a very fair answer. I think when it comes to services, when it comes to certain activities, we do allow municipalities to control those activities. This, based on the research that I've had, and it was a very earnest question. I didn't know perhaps if Representative Lewin or Representative Drazkowski. I look for Representative Hoppe because in the 13 years that I've been on the Commerce Committee, and perhaps Representative Davids, maybe I'll ask you, I don't recall, and I haven't found anything in the research that I've done where we have ever given, in 155 years of statehood, where we've ever enabled a municipality to control the sale or authorization of the sale of a product, an actual product. And what concerns me is that if we can give them the ability to control the sale of it or allow the sale, the corollary is true as well. Now you're talking about the potential for banning products. And that's what has me troubled by this. I'm not actually looking to have fireworks sold out of liquor stores. I think that's kind of a bad combination. But it illustrates the sort of direction that we might go with an amendment like this. More so, I'm concerned about the potential for the banning of certain products or the sale of, or perhaps it's, the whole gamut of ideas come to mind in terms of whether or not we'd allow certain sales to be controlled at the local level. So while I'm a believer in local control, this would be, especially without a hearing, this would be the very first time that Minnesota has allowed for a product to be sold. It was an idea that may or may not be okay, but it certainly isn't something that we should do on the fly with an amendment, and I'd urge a no vote. Mr. Speaker, if I might, I would also ask for a roll call on the underlying amendment.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Atkins, were you withdrawing your amendment there, or what were you doing?
I'm about to withdraw my amendment, but before I sit down, I was just going to ask for, if you want to make a motion on the, okay. What I would ask for is a roll call on the underlying, the A2 amendment.
A roll call has been requested on the A2 amendment. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that was just a matter of convenience. As long as I was standing, I figured I'd ask for the roll call while I had your attention. With that, members, I've made the point with respect to products being controlled at the municipal level, and I'd withdraw the amendment. Thank you for your attention.
Representative Atkins withdraws the A27 amendment. We're now on the A2 Loon amendment. Discussion on that amendment. Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I want to alert you to the letter that I passed out from the Teamsters. Members, Representative Loon, if you would yield to a question.
She will yield. Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Loon, you said that in the questioning that you only did research on liquor law. Did you also do research on federal preemption of deliveries?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Hillstrom. Yes, again, in discussion on this issue and being aware of the Teamsters' concerns about their contracts and about Sunday delivery, I did ask nonpartisan research again for some research and their thoughts on the issue. And as you know, trucking laws, there's some federal laws that oversee that, that have to do with so within your state trucking. that does not allow for the prohibition of the transportation of property. However, the other side of this coin is that the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, grants states broad authority to regulate the importation, distribution, and sale of liquor within their borders, and limits the application of the federal preemption doctrine to such regulations. And liquor stores, off-sale retail liquor stores, and wholesalers are both licensed by the state of Minnesota. And the state is able to put conditions on those licensed entities at a state level. So while lawyers can probably debate whether or not the 21st Amendment would override those federal trucking laws, from my reading of it, I think the language in there would provide a strong case, and as we both probably know, I think clever lawyers could probably bring a case and litigate just about anything.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Loon, there was a Supreme Court case at the United States Supreme Court, Roe versus New Hampshire Motor Transit Association. Did you take a look at that case? That is the case on point on regulation, preemption on the deliveries. Did you look at that case as well?
She will yield. Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hillstrom, no, I did not read that specific case.
Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I wanted to let you know that in February 20th of 2008, the Supreme Court of the United States issued an opinion in Roe versus New Hampshire Motor Transport Association. And that case involved the delivery of tobacco products and making certain that people who were selling tobacco had people sign off on the delivery that the people who were receiving the tobacco were old enough to receive it. So tobacco and alcohol tend to be similar. The legislature has an interest in regulating those kinds of products. And what the federal court held in the Maine versus tobacco delivery, they found that it was preempted under federal law. They said that the pertinent part, the court held that the Federal Act prohibits states from passing laws related to a route, a price, or a service of any motor carrier. Let me repeat that. The Federal Act prohibits states from passing laws related to a price, route, or service of any motor carrier. We are saying that you can't truck on Sundays. I would say that that has something to do with the service that they're eligible to provide, and I would say delivery on Sunday, or lack thereof, would be consistent with having to have someone sign for a product like tobacco. So members, I have supported Sunday liquor sales in the past. I was one of the folks who voted for it when there were only 20 people that were for it. And Representative Loon, your amendment takes me to no. I believe that it is preempted under federal law, and I agree with the letter that the Teamsters put out, and I would urge members to vote no.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Hillstrom. And I think, I appreciate your stance in that, but, it's a little ironic that you would be voting no, because the Teamsters, without this language, would have no protection, according to them, in their contracts and that. And, the language of the amendment doesn't say that you can't truck. It just says that the entities that are licensed by the state of Minnesota to be able to sell liquor or wholesale liquor are not able to accept delivery on Sunday. So again, I think this is a debatable question on which statute or which precedents would stand, the 21st Amendment to the Constitution or federal preemption in the area of transportation. But the language is a good faith attempt to get at what the Teamsters have claimed is their concern about changing anything to do with Sunday liquor sales, is that their members do not want to work on Sunday. And this is an earnest and honest effort to try to accommodate that. So I appreciate your concerns, but members, I think there perhaps isn't a solution there other than they would rather not see this move forward. So I hope members will take all of that information to heart. And again, I would urge members to thoughtfully consider this. whether you're specifically for Sunday liquor sales or not, I think the other question here that you need to weigh is, what is the appropriate branch of government to make these decisions? Your local units of government decide who gets a liquor license and what hours they can operate. And if your city wants to be a dry city and have no alcohol sales at all, they can do that currently. So this just rounds out, honestly, their authorities in this area, and I think it's a good amendment. I ask for your support.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Thiessen, I am the individual who handed out the small leaflet. As a matter of fact, I tip my hat to the staff. They had me sign the top piece and suggested that they would just notify people as they delivered the rest of them who that particular item is from. A little bit of thrift and wise move on behalf of our staff, so I really appreciate that. Members, this is about free markets. This is about the free exchange of contractual relationships between people in the marketplace. Representative Liebling pointed out very clearly early how little sense it makes in Minnesota that we prohibit cars from being sold on Sundays. And that's right. And just the same way, it makes as much sense for us to prohibit another legal product from being sold on Sundays, and that being off-sale alcohol. So, you know, banning alcohol sales on Sundays, which our current law does, makes about as much sense as banning the sale of chickens on Mondays, gas on Tuesdays, or shoes on Wednesdays. It makes no sense, members. And you're going to hear today in the discussions from the opponents of this economic freedom, of this free market amendment, you're going to hear them say that, well, you know, the business owners are telling me, or the more accurately, the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association is telling me that if we change the law and allow free markets to happen on Sundays, businesses are going to be placed in a position to decide whether or not they're going to be open on Sundays or not. And you will hear them also make the same argument that if that is the scenario, if this passes into law, they are making the argument that if we operate then as a business on Sunday, we're going to lose money. And the next day they'll tell you, if we don't operate as business on a Sunday, we're going to lose money. And they're going to lose money whether they're open or not on Sunday, is what they're telling us. So members, which one is it? Are they going to lose money if they're open on Sundays or if they don't open on Sundays? It's a circular and empty argument. Now we look at the state of Minnesota. We're surrounded by states that allow Sunday liquor sales. We've become an island of economic freedom. This ban that we have in the state of Minnesota, this prohibition, suppresses economic activity. Members, we are exporting our commerce. Our businesses are giving up opportunity, and we are exporting commerce to Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Ontario. We are an island. And if I remember the fiscal notes accurately, it was brought up earlier by another representative. I think I remember there's about $10 or $12 million or so of tax money that we are giving up here. Now, I'm not somebody to suggest we should pass this because we need more tax money. As a matter of fact, I would turn around and offer that as a tax cut to people. But some people here might look at that differently and suggest maybe we want that $10 or $12 million for education or for the environment or some other budgetary item that we've been debating for the last week and will be for the next week. Now this amendment passed, as I understand, or actually a different version, a less local version, the full repeal of this ban that we are placing on commerce in our state was brought to the Senate floor, where if 4 votes would have changed from no to yes, it would have passed. members, denying the opportunity to some businesses because others enjoy the protectionism that this ban brings to guarantee a common day off, to guarantee a common day that those businesses are closed. They could still be closed on Sunday. As a matter of fact, I used to work for a liquor store right across the river in Wisconsin, right across from Minnesota. By the way, where on Sundays, the Minnesota license plates in the liquor store parking lot outnumber the Wisconsin license plates. Same thing across the river from Wabasha and Nelson. By the way, the first business you come to on each side is a liquor store. Go figure. But I used to work at that liquor store across the river from Winona back when, in the early 80s, when my pay was $3.25 an hour. And we were closed on Mondays. So we were open the full weekend and Tuesday. So we were on Tuesday through Sunday and closed on Mondays. And believe it or not, they're operating in Wisconsin there today under the unbelievable idea that businesses will decide when they will and will not be closed or opened. So, members, let's deny the big liquor lobby what they have been fighting for with their big dollars here over the last how many years. Let's listen to the nearly two-thirds of Minnesotans who want to restore freedom to our state in this area. Please vote with me in supporting Representative Loom's amendment to end the state government-imposed ban on Sunday liquor sales. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Loon yield to a question?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Loon, I heard in your comments about how the potential litigation involved in this amendment. And of course, as a lawyer, my ears perked up because litigation is always a great thing for lawyers, right? And so I was going to ask you, do you anticipate that if this passes and this goes in, that in fact this law will be litigated?
Representative Loon.
Well, thanks, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lesh, I guess, you know, I'm not certain, but if the Teamsters don't want to be delivering on Sundays and the intent of the amendment and the language is drafted so that the entities that we license, liquor stores and wholesalers, don't accept deliveries on Sunday, I don't know who would sue. Would the Teamsters sue because they don't want to be driving on Sundays anyway? I guess I'm not certain who would be bringing that kind of suit.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Representative Lesh.
Would Representative Loon yield to another question?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
Well, Representative Loon, I'll read you the title of the Supreme Court case that Representative Hillstrom just cited. It was Stephen Rowe versus New Hampshire Motor Transport Association. Stephen Rowe was the Attorney General of Maine, and he was sued by the Motor Transport Association of the neighboring state. So I'm guessing that would be the answer probably here, whether it's Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, or Wisconsin. But I'm wondering if you could answer for me in that case was some pivotal language, because I actually like your amendment. In answering, some people saying, well, let's conclude this Sunday sales debate. The Teamsters don't want to deliver on Sunday. I'm like, well, just craft an amendment that says they don't have to, which is what you're doing, right? Now, as Representative Hillstrom stated, she believes that would be inadequate. And I was sent this language, but I find it curious because this was language found in an FAA Administration Act, an old Aviation Administrative Act, but the language was found in there, which is where this was litigated. So if I can just read you this language briefly. The court also emphasized that the Airline Act's overarching goal of helping ensure that transportation rates, routes, and services reflect maximum reliance on competitive market forces, and stated that federal law might not preempt state laws affecting fares only tenuously, remotely, or peripherally, but did not say where or how it would draw the line on borderline questions. Now, Representative Loon, would you consider this amendment that you're offering a borderline question, meaning you're satisfied that it would not be preempted under federal law?
Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Lesh. Well, I am not an attorney, so I hesitate to comment on a legal line of questioning, but it's, again, it's my belief that the amendment as crafted would stand legal scrutiny, again, from discussions I've had with nonpartisan research and that. It doesn't mean someone wouldn't challenge it. But under the case that you cited, you know, I still think the amendment does get at the heart of the problem and would have good legal standing.
Well, Mr.
Representative
Speaker,
Lesh.
and members, I do have some questions and concerns based on this language, and a very small percentage of the laws we pass in this body, members, are actually litigated. We actually do a really good job at ensuring that we dot the I's and cross the T's, and they don't end up getting litigated after the fact. And if they do, we come in and we change it afterwards. But this is a pretty big deal, and based upon the language that was shown to me, I do have some nervousness. I don't want to pass a law that ends up getting litigated afterwards, and the state ends up paying for that because it's our Attorney General, of course, who would be sued for this. So I am a no on this amendment, Representative Loon. I think it's a good effort. I just want to see things to be a little more certain before we get sued.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we've talked about the free market issues, and that's generally what I stand up and talk about and have over the past few years from this side of the aisle, which has always been kind of interesting. We've talked about some of the court and legal issues, and while I'm not an attorney either, as Representative Loon alluded to the same concern, I do know that we go to conference committee from here and that we can continue to work on this language and make it better. So for that reason, I'm not going to dwell on that either. But I am going to talk a little bit about modernization. And we need to remember many of these laws come from the old blue laws. And I lived down south and went to graduate school there. And I saw what happened when states had blue laws. I saw over my county line, people would drive on the weekends and there would be cars lined up for miles so people could go across the county line to use the off-sale and liquor stores. I think, you know, we've moved beyond that, but one of the reasons we've moved beyond it isn't just for moral reasons, it's because our whole construct as a society has changed. It takes both husbands and wives, both spouses, to work in order to survive in today's world, which means people are working 8 to 5 or 3 to 11 or what have you and sleeping the rest of the time. They're doing their best, some working 2 and 3 jobs. The busiest shopping days are on the weekend. That's when people are free. That's when they need to be able to do their shopping. And that includes, if they so choose, to purchase their alcohol for the week or the month or the year. And, you know, back to that the free market issue, this isn't forcing anyone to be open. This is just saying if they so choose, they could be open. I feel like I'm arguing my school start time legislation here. But this is really about modernization. It's about looking at what families need today and reacting to those. And so, members, I'll be supporting Representative Loon's amendment and encourage you to as well.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin. The member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I just first want to thank Representative Loon for championing this issue. She's been a tireless advocate for Sunday sales here in Minnesota. And Representative Norton made some excellent points when it comes to this issue. When you look at the state of Minnesota, over 60% of Minnesota's population lives within 30 miles of a border. 60% of Minnesotans live within 30 miles of a border. And for those border communities, the reality of when you go to Wisconsin or North Dakota and you look at the license plates at the liquor stores on Sunday, they are predominantly Minnesota license plates. And imagine for those liquor stores that are within 30 miles of that border, what that means to them. That's business lost from them, from their small mom and pop shops. Business lost to the state of Minnesota and the revenue that comes with it. I've had the opportunity, I had 2 weekends back to back. One weekend when I was in Wisconsin, the other weekend when I was over in North Dakota. And just for kicks, my husband and I said, well, let's just go check out the local liquor stores. By far, 90% of the cars that were sitting in those liquor stores were Minnesota license plates. Folks, we are not changing the equation here. We're just changing about where that business happens. Rather than having that business happen over in Wisconsin or North Dakota, let's bring that business back here to this state. Vote yes for the Loon Amendment.
The member from Sibley, Representative Grunhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just a point of information. I have a very close friend who's runs a distributorship of beer and alcohol, and he says the majority of people who go over the border to buy alcohol is not because of Sunday sales. It's because the taxes are lower over in Wisconsin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion on the amendment? The member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am opposed to the amendment. I have spoken to all the liquor store owners in Mankato and the area, and I have yet to find a single one that supports it. To me, this looks like an all-out assault on mom and pop liquor stores. They will incur an additional 52 days a year of overhead with almost no appreciable increase in revenue. I mean, there's nobody that says they're going to sell more. It's going to be roughly the same. Wait, another point. What was that? I forgot what it was. Anyway, the free market argument. In Mankato, Sam's Club can sell wine and liquor cheaper than our local stores can buy at wholesale. So that the idea that there's a free market is a joke. They're having a hard time competing, and this is going to make it worse, and this is going to drive a lot of them out of business. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to members. I want to thank especially Representative Drazkowski. I think he hit the nail right on the head here. This really is about free markets and about local governments making decisions that most affect the people in their communities. This is not about saying every community has to have their liquor stores open on Sunday or that any store has to open on Sunday. This is about choices and about allowing those communities and those businesses within it and those consumers within that community to make a choice about how they want to operate their businesses, how they want to shop, and who should have jurisdiction about the businesses and their operations within your city or within your county or your township. So, members, it's time. There are only 12 states that decide that there should be no liquor sold on Sunday. And as was commented before, it's not if, it's when. This change is coming. I think you all recognize that. The competition is here. And I must say, you know, for the concerns about the mom and pops, I have a deep feeling for those small businesses. I spent a lot of time working on trying to promote and help small businesses in my legislative work. But we heard from a lot of small businesses who are liquor store owners who want this, who feel very much that perhaps their industry is seeking to keep on the books a law that really does harm to their business and their ability to operate as they see fit. As I mentioned, the gentleman who flew down from Tower for an informational hearing, there was discussion brought up by the other side about having a day off on Sunday. He said, with our economy up in northern Minnesota right now, he said, I would have a line of people begging me for the extra hours on Sunday that they could make to support their family if they were allowed to do so. So, you know, for everybody who thinks this may hurt a mom and pop, there are others who are begging for this, and that is they see it as a critical line of business for them and for their survival. So I would again ask members to support the A2 amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 57 ayes and 75 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Khan and others move to amend Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded RA 15-018.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Khan, to explain your amendment.
Mr. Speaker, is it possible to lay this over and have 019 first?
Certainly. Representative Khan temporarily withdraws the 018 amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Khan and others move to amend Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended. And this amendment is coded RA 15-019.
Representative Khan, to your amendment.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This is something that we should have done a really, really long time ago. As we know, what happened is that the federal government put a clause in the federal highway funding which said that if states did not increase the drinking age from 18 to 21, they would lose a certain percentage of their highway funding. Though, if you see in the piece of paper that I've handed out, which has my name on it, which is entitled Subchapter B Guidelines, National Minimum Drinking Age, the federal government specifically allowed, in the law at that time, specifically allowed, if you turn it over to the second page of that, specifically allowed an exception, which allowed that, which said that possession of an alcohol beverage for any reason is specifically excluded the possession of alcohol for an established religious purpose when accompanied by a parent, spouse, or legal guardian aged 21 or older, etc., and then several things. Now, I guess at the time, I never looked at this exception because I was so irritated at the idea of raising the age in general and never thought, I just decided to vote no, along with, I recall, Speaker Jennings at the time, who was very irritated at that one also. But as I started working on this issue recently, I looked and found this exemption. It's interesting, our neighboring state of Wisconsin has this exemption in their law, so that a family going out to eat in Wisconsin is able to have, wine served with dinner, which we taught our kids was the proper thing to do when eating dinner, at any time. I also found out upon talking to people that when the House originally passed the bill to increase the drinking age to 21, it did include this exemption. And the exemption apparently was removed by our compatriots in the Senate. God knows why, but no one ever quite knows what they do. There's also another reason to think that it's time. Now, this is a separate exemption, so I think this is all we need to do. And if you would, Representative Hoppe, yield to a question. Is he here? Well, I was going to have him speak to it himself, but you'll notice on the amendment, besides lots and lots of co-authors, Representative Hoppe is also a co-author of this amendment, and he supports this amendment. This should give us no problems with anything. If you believe in parental control and the state not interfering with the rights of parents, this is the amendment to vote for.
Any further discussion on the Khan amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the Khan amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Representative Khan, would you like to offer the 018 amendment?
Sure.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Well,
Khan moves to amend Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded RA 15-018.
Representative Khan.
Mr. Speaker, well, it was pretty strange that that other one didn't pass. It didn't sound like I had the number of people who signed on as co-authors even voting for it. But let me try this one. Maybe this is the one they were waiting for. This one specifically changes for on-sale drinking only, changes the drinking age from 21 to 18. This is for on-sale only. Now, of course, one of the things, again, the federal restriction on this is not clear. I would expect that where we were to pass this, we should explain our reasoning to the federal government. Now, some of the reasons, one of the interesting things that has happened is that the number of people who are talking about doing this. For example, there's a group called the Amethyst. Now, I start out being interested in this because I have 3 college campuses in my district. And one of the things is a group called the Amethyst Institute, and the Amethyst Institute has a petition that's signed by 136 college presidents saying that they think part of the problem of binge drinking on campus results from the raising of the drinking age to 21. That does 2 things. Remember, in this amendment, this is for on sale only. So we're doing it where people are under supervision, where they're at a place which would have dram shop restrictions and so forth. So 136 college presidents. These are the people who have really seen the effect of raising the drinking age to 21, have signed a petition saying it's time to reconsider what we've done. I have a terrific, I didn't pass this out to everyone. I have a terrific term paper that was written to me sent to me when she was a teenager, so long ago she's probably a grandmother by now. And one of the things she talks about in this paper is going away to Germany as a student with a teenage group. Said 15 other American students from the same program were in the same community. In Germany, the legal drinking laws allowed people of 16 years of age to drink wine or beer in the presence of an adult, and people of 18 years of age to purchase any alcohol beverage on their own. As a large group, we often attended parties and went to bars and clubs together. The drinking behavior among the group varied greatly from the native Germans to the American exchange students. The German teenagers who had experienced drinking alcohol moderately with their families were able to control themselves and drink responsibly. However, this was not the case among the American students. Overjoyed with the availability of this forbidden fruit, the majority of the Americans repeatedly became completely intoxicated and behaved recklessly. This is, in fact, exactly what our government was trying to prevent. It became evident to me that the American policies probably led to more alcohol abuse than the more lenient approach in Germany. Mr. Speaker, I think the 18-year-olds in your district who can vote, who can go to war, ought to know how you're going to vote on this issue. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like a roll call vote on this.
Representative Khan requests a roll call vote. Maybe you need to sell it a little more, Representative Khan.
I think you want to if you feel strongly about this, you ought to let the people in your district know how you want to vote on it. Hey, give me a roll call. Give me a roll call.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Khan.
I don't think there's anything more I can say on this. I would love to hear somebody say something in opposition to it so I can totally correct any misapprehensions they have.
Discussion on the Khan amendment. The member from St. Louis, Representative Metza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Khan, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm just going to say this is a good amendment and vote for it.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Khan amendment. I'm a little leery too because she runs so slow nowadays, but I thought I'd tease her because she's saying this how fast she is. But anyways, a couple of years ago in my district, we lost a young man fighting in the Middle East. He was 18 years old. And I was sitting next to Governor Pawlenty at the time, and Senator Uyghur and myself, and Congressman McCollum. And as you sit there and you think what that young person did for our country and was trying to do for all of us, and then it just kind of hit me. He was 18 years old and never had a beer if he wanted one. Anyways.
Any further discussion on the Khan amendment? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 19 ayes and 113 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Drazkowski moves to amend Senate File 1238, the first engrossment, as amended, and the amendment is coded A6.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski, to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the A6 amendment is similar to Representative Loon's amendment, except it does not have the language in it dictating to local communities about distributors and when they can and cannot, make deliveries. So it allows the local municipalities to decide whether it's a city or a county. I'd appreciate your support.
There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Drazkowski moves to amend his amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A13.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski, to introduce your amendment to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment to the amendment would limit the amount of time that liquor stores would be open on Sunday. If a municipality gave them the ability to sell liquor on Sundays, they could only be open from 11 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. instead of the normal 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So instead of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., Sunday would be different than the rest of the days of the week in a jurisdiction that opted into this by saying on Sunday you're only open from 11 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. I'd encourage your support for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion on the Drazkowski amendment to his amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The motion does not prevail, and the amendment to the amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Earhart moves to amend the Drazkowski amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment to the amendment is coded RA 15-022.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the only reason I wanted to pursue this was I was trying to figure out why Representative Drazkowski voted against my amendment here a short time ago. Because of all the free market people in the place, this gave him a great opportunity to send that message to the rest of the world. And yet he refused to vote for an overthrow of the Speaker's ruling. I think you got to take him aside over there, some of you folks that are members of the Tea Party and or the whatever the Liberty Group, the Liberty PAC. You ought to take him aside and tell him what free market is. And then I'm going to withdraw my amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Earhart withdraws his amendment. And thankfully there wasn't a motion to overthrow the Speaker. There is another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson moves to amend the Drazkowski amendment to Senate File 1238, the first engrossment as amended, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A22.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hanson, to your amendment to the Drazkowski amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Drazkowski yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, in the earlier debate you referenced revenue raised from Sunday sales, and I was unclear whether that was gross revenue or whether that was tax revenue. Could you maybe define that source? Because as I referenced when I brought up a similar amendment earlier, an earlier fiscal note was between 300 and 500,000, and I'm trying to get data on what we're really talking about.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Hanson. What I was referring to was my recollection, which Representative Hanson could be off, but I think I remember $10 to $12 million, which would comprise both the sales tax and the excise tax. At the same time, Representative Hertaus was trying to communicate something to me, so he may have a better recollection. You may want to ask him to yield as well, but I remember 10 to 12 million being the total tax receipts that we are giving up to other states.
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I'm ruled out of order on this, if I could just ask Representative Hertaus to yield to a question.
Unfortunately, yes, he is here. I'm sorry. He will yield. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hertaus, Representative Drazkowski referenced you had numbers in terms of the amount, and could you maybe clarify what that revenue is, if it's gross receipts or if it's sales tax revenue, and what the source of that data is?
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the data that I last read was $13 million of sales tax revenue.
Representative Hanson.
And Mr. Speaker, Representative Hertaus, what was the source of that information? Was it a fiscal note, or was it Department of Revenue, or was it, where did that number come from?
He will yield. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honestly, I don't any longer recall. I remember writing some constituent responses. I think this was probably going back to even last year. It was at $13 million. So I do remember the number. I do remember communicating to constituents about the Sunday sales issue, but I don't recall any longer where that was. I believe it was from Department of Revenue, but I'm not certain. I wouldn't want to be quoted on it.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Representative Kresha, state your point of order.
And thank you for the cue. Under House Rules 3.21, paragraph B, I rule this amendment not germane to the debate.
Representative Hansen, do you have advice?
Mr. Speaker, I was going to withdraw the amendment.
Representative Hansen withdraws the A22 amendment to the Drazkowski amendment. There are no further amendments to that amendment at the desk, so that Drazkowski A6 amendment is before the body. Further discussion on the Drazkowski A6 amendment. The member from Dakota, Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker. First up, point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Is it under 9.41 that we can make that motion to overthrow the Speaker?
I will look for it for you, Representative Atkins. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First up, I'd ask for a roll call on the Drazkowski amendment, please.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Drazkowski, I won't ask you to yield because I don't think your answer will be any different than it was 36 minutes ago. But I assume that there haven't been any additional products. The point I made earlier with respect to Representative Loon's proposed amendment was that we've not done this in 150 years with respect to any product being allowed or banned. And what I'm concerned about is actually this could be flipped on its head. It's a slippery slope where rather than authorizing sale of a product, we might actually, the corollary to that is we'd authorize municipalities to ban a product as well. But aside from that, Representative Drazkowski has made a point about if you don't support Sunday sales, you support big liquor, you support big money and big liquor. Just in pulling it up on my computer, I see that the folks on the other side that are lobbying in favor of Representative Drazkowski's point are the likes of Walmart, Jim Beam, Bacardi, Diageo, Patron. It strikes me that the interests are pretty evenly represented on both sides of this. We're not necessarily talking about beer sales in liquor stores. We're talking about liquor sales at Walmart. This is a much, when you talk about the, as Representative Considine pointed out, the moms and pops, they showed up for Representative Hoppy's hearing and talked about you're not adding any revenues for them. You're adding one more day of work. You're adding that much more expense. And if they can't afford to hire anybody else, you're taking their one day off a week and putting them in the store. That's why folks argue against Sunday sales. And with that, I oppose the Drazkowski amendment for both the reason that this would be the first time in state history that we're putting municipalities in charge of product sales at the local level, but also because it was good to have that hearing and listen to the small mom and pop liquor stores when they talked about the issue.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, through zoning, many of all of our local municipalities have the ability to provide controls that they provide for a wide variety of enterprises within their jurisdictions. And members, it is the small mom and pop liquor stores that are in my district that are asking for this, whether it's those liquor stores in Wabasha or Goodview or where they're at, the Buck Stop grocery store and liquor store in Wanamengo, population 1,000. Members, those are the liquor stores owners. Those are the businessmen that want to move forward and build their business so that they can provide services to their community, so that they can provide for their family, so that they can provide for their employees, so that they can pursue the American dream through free markets. Appreciate your support for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 48 ayes and 84 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There being no further amendments at the desk, the clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File 1238, as amended.
Third reading. Members, we're now back to the bill as amended before the body. Discussion on the bill as amended. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 4 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.